Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Financial Autonomy for Women, the Personal Finance Podcast. My name is Maureen Paley. I am so excited to be with you today. I'm always excited to be your host for this podcast. Today is no different. This podcast is for anyone that has received the gendered conditioning that typically comes with being assigned the female sex at birth. A lot of what we do on this podcast is talk about how that conditioning affects our present lives and also affects our financial autonomy and our financial agency. Today's episode is going to interweave and bring in a lot of aspects in our life and understand how it intersects with our money. So I'm really excited about today's episode. Let me tell you the title. It is Disordered Consumption: What You Need to Know About Finances and Food with Jaelyn Vickery. So our very special guest today is Jaelyn Vickery, who is a financial therapist and a licensed social worker. And let me tell you a little bit more about Jaelyn. So as a financial therapist and entrepreneur, Jaelyn specializes in bridging the gap between wealth and wellness, helping individuals build sustainable, holistic abundance. Jaelyn's work developing disordered consumption explores the link between compulsive spending, eating, and consumerism psychology, offering valuable insights into financial autonomy. As the host of the Financial Fitness Finesse podcast, she's experienced in delivering engaging educational financial content tailored to diverse audiences. And Jaelyn's background as a Division I student athlete allows her to discuss identity development and financial empowerment, particularly for high-achieving women navigating financial independence. I've got goosebumps just reading that. Jaelyn Vickery, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Maureen. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you here. So we're talking about, I think for a lot of people, what might be a new topic or a new name of a topic: disordered consumption. And I want to let everybody know, and as you know, you and I are in the social work profession and the financial profession. So we want to let everyone know right off the bat, we're probably going to be talking about some clinical diagnoses today as part of our conversation. So what advice would you give people listening to best understand the information that we share and how to apply it to their lives?
Yeah, I appreciate you acknowledging that. So, for those listening in our community, in the podcast community, I'm sure that you understand when you listen to shows, it's to offer different perspectives, trigger different thought patterns, and maybe recognize different elements of your life that you connect with in the content. However, this is not clinical or financial advice, though we do come from that background. So, if you would like to work with either of us, I'm sure Maureen will have my information in the show notes, and then we can really take more of a proactive relationship in regards to working with whatever you would need clinically or financially. But this show is definitely for just to expand our awareness as lifelong learners.
Yeah, I really like the way that you put that. So thank you. And let's dive right in to this concept of disordered consumption. First of all, for someone that hasn't heard of it before, how would you describe it?
Yeah, so great question. So we've all heard of consumerism, and
Mhm.
I mean, we have to consume to survive. Consumption is essential. We need food, shelter, resources to survive. But when consumerism shifts from necessity to compulsion, especially with how much we are fed by the media and just propaganda, advertising all around us every day, it can start to really harm our well-being. So this was when I've conducted extensive research as an eating disorder therapist, clinical background, also utilizing financial therapy, and published it in the last year on eating disorders and financial strain. And that was received so well in the community from conducting that research over a 12-month period. I was like, okay, how can I expand on this? And this is one of those ideas where you're just like sleeping in the middle of the night and you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, disordered consumption just popped up in my mind. And so, you go into the Google deep dive to see if there's been any sort of research done on this, even though we as consumers are researched on our psychology, how to keep us locked in and keep doom scrolling, retail therapy. Not that some of that's, I'm not saying that stuff is bad, like we'll get
Mm-hmm.
into that.
Mm-hmm.
But there wasn't much development on the term disordered consumption. And then with that, mindful consumption. So to really provide a definition of what disordered consumption is, it's a pattern of excessive, compulsive, or avoidant behavior that is related to acquiring, using, or even withholding resources. And this can go for food, money, material goods, sex, information. I mean, think about all the things that we consume as people.
Right.
And honestly, Maureen, it's often driven by emotional, psychological, and the societal influences rather than actual need.
Thank you so much for breaking that down for us. I mean, there's so much to unpack, and I know that like the rest of our conversation, we're going to unpack it. Um, but I think first, what I'd like to recognize is what you're sharing is in a lot of ways exactly what this show is about. The intersection of the psychological and the systemic, and
Mhm.
how that those forces affect us in our day-to-day lives, actions, and well-being, right? I know that a lot of what you're doing you're focusing on financial wellness. And so our wellness isn't just maybe body wellness, right? It's financial, it's psychological, it's emotional, it's relationship wellness, so on and so forth. So I really love that, how this fits in with the essence, I believe, of this podcast about how the psychological and the systemic intersect and affects our lives. And then when we learn about that intersection, how we can use it to apply it in our life to potentially make our wellness better. So that breakdown is fantastic. And you raise a really interesting point. And this is a point that personally I've struggled with personally in my journey over the years, but not so much anymore. I'm taking a more moderate approach to it. But we have to consume to survive, right? I kind of, in the past, I have been in maybe mindsets where I've looked at consumerism as really, really negative. And I've actually spent a lot of time and energy myself trying to be a good consumer and trying to be a consumer that creates minimal impact. And what I started learning was like, oh gosh, I'm running myself ragged to find, vegan leather shoes that are made in America that are, that aren't part of this like mass produced thing. So, all that to say, consumerism is a real part of what we experience, right? That you mentioned, like, we have to consume to survive. So, I think I just want to share that with people. Like, I think that word consumerism has a lot of negative aspects attached to it. And, what have you found in your research about folks' perception about consumerism or about how that system works on us?
hmm I hear you, Maureen, and I really appreciate you sharing that aspect of what your challenges have been, especially as a woman, as to okay, what is my footprint? What is my blueprint in regards to the things that I consume?
Right.
And it really comes down to us recognizing that as social beings, we learn socially and we work to find a sense of belonging socially. I mean, we are even consumers of validation. And if you think about it as women, I mean, we're constantly put under a microscope sometimes, a magnifying glass, really taking that hard look as to how am I presenting myself? How am I making an impact on the world? And I mean, I live in the Midwest. I know that you live in California. So even there, like there's different elements of consumption that are expected environmentally to really take care of our earth. And I'm not even going to get all the way into like, oh, we should be like super into like fighting climate change and things like that. Trust me, I'm a very earthy person. There's like plants all up my walls here. Um, but it's very important for us to understand that in regards to the things that we consume, which we have to consume to survive, there's nothing wrong with consumerism. Bringing in that aspect of mindful consumption, of asking yourself, is the consumption of this good contributing to the good in my life? And as I've asked myself that question more and worked with my clients to ask themselves that, it really recognizes the values aspect that is associated with the things that we take in our day to day. And along with that, it's critical to how do I want to put this? It's critical to be mindful of the cycles that happen whenever we're taking in something. So in my
Mm-hmm.
research, I found, like, I call it the C3 cycle. It starts with a compulsion. All right. You have some sort of feeling. So we'll stick with food for right now. You have a compulsion to eat. And this is most likely at the end of a long day. You probably didn't eat before noon, and you were eating minimally, and so then you get to the end of your day after all of this energy was expended out of you, and you have this compulsion to not only get more energy into your body because your body is asking for more so it can continue to process, but you're also maybe getting a compulsion from loneliness. It could be anxiety from all the things, all the tasks that we constantly have, the overhead tax of productivity dysmorphia, which I struggle with sometimes. So we have that compulsion to control. We have that compulsion that initiates consumption so that we can help work with that uncomfortable feeling. So from compulsion, you go to consumption, and that's all an effort to control the underlying feelings that you continue to suppress all throughout the day. So this C3 cycle of compulsion, consumption, control, it is very much associated with suppressed feelings while also seeking relief feelings all at the same time. So that's been something pretty interesting I found in my research and some of my clinical work.
That's amazing. So compulsion, consumption, control. Those are the three C's that if anybody
Mhm.
needs a summary of that, like walking away with that: compulsion, consumption, control. I love how you laid that out for us. And like you mentioned food, but I like my 8:30 at night sitting on the couch wondering, looking on my Amazon app, right? I can easily overlay that scenario on the compulsion consumption control, right? Like you said, had a long day, I'm tired, so on and so forth. Maybe my resources are a little thin or they're a little challenged for really doing that mindful consumption. So yeah, those three elements make so much sense when you hear them. And I also want to reflect for everybody listening, like disordered consumption, when I encountered Jaelyn's work and her research, it's not just, something that she's touting out in the world, right? Like a platform, but it's the research behind it and the clinical experience behind it. So I want to like reflect that for our audience, that this isn't just like pulled out of the hat. You've done
Mhm.
a lot of work to develop this and to look at it deeper.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's ongoing development too. I mean, and it's going to take a very diverse amount of people from different backgrounds. Like, I come from an eating disorder, clinical and financial space, but people who have experience, with like sex, information, marketing, even yourself, just like as a consumer. You brought up that the scrolling at night. I love scrolling through like different clothing things too. And there's nothing wrong with that.
right.
But it's more so about when you find yourself doing it for maybe a longer amount of time than what you want, you have that ping, like that thought where you're like, I should get off my phone. The term that I like to use is lasso the thought. So
Mm,
when you get that initial ping of, I'm doing this too much, or I'm adding too many things to my cart, rather than just like suppressing it and continuing to scroll, which you can continue to, first lasso the thought and really take in, okay, am I scrolling because my mind is tired, but I want some mental stimulation? Okay, that's fine. It's really about lassoing the thought and becoming a student of self so that you just seek to understand as to why you're behaving certain ways. So that, trust me, I love being a therapist, but then you don't have to always go to a therapist when things get really bad and you're like, I just don't know why I act the way I do, or I just don't know why I can't reach this goal. It's because you're not lassoing the thoughts that are contradictory to some of the negativity bias that may be, sitting with you when you're doing a habit that you view as unfavorable.
So I had this exact experience last night. I'm going to go ahead and confess to everybody that I spent way too long on my phone, over an hour maybe, looking at reels on Instagram. I feel icky just saying that out loud. However, what I realized, and I've known this about social media, and I think, this might resonate with people listening. So my brain doesn't understand the difference between Instagram and, like, let's say a slot machine, right? Like I just keep going and going and going and going, looking for the stimulation, keeping the dopamine and other neurochemicals going. So, and what I reminded myself when I thought about it this morning, because I was like, gosh, like, do I want my brain to be in that space on a regular basis? Like there's only so many hours in the day. Is that how I want to train my brain? Do I want, because I'm a believer, having practiced meditation for a long time as well. Like even if you're not training your brain, you're training your brain at something, right? So it's like, what do I want to train my brain to be and to feel like? Because I think that impact on our brain impacts our day-to-day wellness and our day-to-day lives. So what I reminded myself of, and I think that this is relevant to our conversation, is that, Meta, Facebook, Instagram, they build the algorithm to be something that's addictive, right? To keep me consuming. So
Mhm.
sometimes when I look at how things work, I kind of get under the hood. That helps me separate, stop blaming myself, and also be like, ooh, that's what they're after. They really want me to consume, and they've built this in a way that knows that it's going to like hijack and hook my brain.
Yeah. Amen to that. Like that right there is the golden piece because there are companies that are using our consumerism psychology against us a little bit to keep
Oh,
us hooked.
totally.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
just like the fact that just recognize that. And I like scrolling through reels from time to time too. I love laughing at different things,
Mhm.
sharing them with friends, and think about it, when you share it, it attacks that community aspect, that
Mhm.
social aspect. And so just recognize that they are using consumerism psychology, elements of disordered consumption, while not reminding us of that mindful consumption. I mean, they may throw in that reel that says, "Oh, you've been scrolling for a long time. Maybe you should take a break." That's been on TikTok, but you just like scroll past it. So,
Mhm.
I mean, you could even use those opportunities to lasso the thought of maybe let me just go get a drink of water. Let me get up and just go and walk and go touch the wall like in my
Mhm.
apartment. I mean, just do
Yeah.
something different just to break
Yeah.
that cycle up and think to yourself, okay, my mind may be tired, but still wants to be stimulated. This is how I like to enjoy the rest of my day. And I mean, it's so hard, Maureen, because we live in hustle culture that's also in the information era. And I just find it so ironic that we can put so much time into other things, but not take a second just to learn more about ourselves.
Mhm.
And I mean, the greatest project of a lifetime is yourself. So you're telling me that you can't take 3 seconds just to recognize why you are partaking in something and what it means to you. We're not saying don't scroll, don't shop, don't eat. Like, we're not saying that at all.
Mhm.
That's a part of our human experience in the society we live in. But it's all attached to a feeling. Everything we consume is attached to a feeling. Whether you're trying to escape a feeling to feel something else,
Mhm.
or whether you're just engaging in it to elevate a certain feeling, So I just find it ironic when people are like, "Oh, I just want to escape and not think or not feel." I'm like, "Well, you're feeling something else." So, I'm
Right.
sorry to tell you, like, as humans, you're always going to feel something.
Right. Right. And so I think, in regards to the like personal finance space, if someone's listening, like what are the things that you would say are, not necessarily red flags, but indicators, I guess is a better word, of someone who might be experiencing disordered consumption in regards to their finances? Like what are the things that might show up to get somebody thinking like, oh yeah, something's not right here?
That's a great question. And it's a great question because I value the work I do as a clinical therapist because it holds me accountable to look inward and be aware of my lifestyle and be aware of the challenges that I face as a consumer, um, so that I can truly be present for the people that I work with. And so, to answer your question, it starts with emotions are often the underlying force behind our consumption patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Emotion plus an experience equals feelings that are associated with that experience of consuming. And so people don't just spend money, overeat, or seek validation because they want to. They do it to self-soothe, escape, or feel a sense of control, and money is a huge part of people feeling secure. But that's really where the dangerous aspect comes in is if if your self-worth is tied to your net worth and your sense of security is tied to your money, then you're always going to be constantly chasing and in pursuit, also known as the rat race, while
Mm-hmm.
not having that overall abundant and dimensional wealth where you can be wealthy in all aspects of the human experience. And so if someone's experiencing elements of disorder consumption, what I found is that some of the signs, it starts with that compulsion. So you may feel out of control with spending, eating, or seeking external validation. Like you got that new green sweater, right? And it looks
Mm-hmm.
great. And you're like, like I'm not too sure about it, but your roommate complimented you on it. We were talking before. And I complimented you on it when I first saw you, and you were like, okay, like maybe I can work green a little bit more. And like, that's awesome. Like, you deserve to have validation because it shows that social and that relational connection. But what can happen is sometimes if you're experiencing disordered consumption and you may not have the internal self security or body security, you may be like, well, I need to just get more green because people
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to me when I wear green. And
Mm-hmm.
and it can get pretty elevated, and that can be centered in some pretty deep rooted limiting beliefs. So with personal finance starts with that compulsion. That's one of the signs. Another sign is avoidance with your personal finance. So if you find yourself consuming more, or even you might be scared to recognize it, so you could be avoiding it because you're scared to look at your financial footprint. So that includes ignoring bank statements, refusing to check balances, or even avoiding food related stress. And then that goes into another sign of guilt and shame, regret after spending or eating, and then repeating that cycle. And then there's even those extreme behaviors, which I've experienced. I've had an eating disorder before, and that has tied directly into my financial state. So that could be
Mm-hmm.
swinging between excessive restriction and that overindulgence. So it's a very cyclical pattern, but some of the
Mm-hmm.
signs, just to sum it up, are compulsion, avoidance, guilt and shame, and then some extreme behaviors.
Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you for laying that out for us because compulsion, consumption, what was the next one? Compulsion.
Compulsion, consumption, control.
Right. And so, and the elements, the signals, right? The evidence of like things not being orderly, but being disordered. I've experienced all those in regards to money, personal finances, spending, so on and so forth, right? Shame, like, hello, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we talk about a lot of that here. And I think one thing that is really interesting, right? We're trying to talk about something that is a common experience, most likely for everybody. It's not just about money, it's about the other things we consume in our lives. And so, kind of understanding this better can help us get from recognizing where the challenged aspect is, the disordered consumption. And then also, when we understand that, we can understand what mindful consumption, as you say, looks like. So let's talk a little bit more about what does mindful consumption look like?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Maureen. And so before I get into mindful consumption, what do you think about let's walk through like a case study together?
Oh, I would love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because what my previous research that I published, I conducted 4 different case studies over a 12-month period with clients at this eating disorder clinic. and changed some of their names and information for HIPAA standards and things like that. So
Mhm.
I want to connect with our audience first on a term called money dysmorphia. Have you ever heard of
Mhm.
that before?
Yes, we actually have. I dedicated a whole episode to it, maybe
Good,
not quite
good.
a year ago, but yeah. But I'd love to hear what your take is.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, definitely connect that episode in the show notes because it's all
Mhm.
intertwined. So,
Mhm.
so money dysmorphia, just to like brush over it, is having we've heard of body dysmorphia, so having a distorted view of our body, not maybe truly seeing it for what it actually is. That can also go for our money, right? And so the way that money dysmorphia ties into disordered consumption, I'll give an example here that even I've experienced recently is you're trying to really work with your personal finance goals. Maybe you're trying to build an emergency fund, saving up to invest in something, whether it's yourself, your home, retirement, or just maybe something that you want to spend on. And you have done the work to really be diligent and intentional with your money strategy, but you may live in an area where, and honestly, this is kind of everywhere these days, where it's more expensive to eat out. And you may have a group of friends, colleagues, or at work that just really love like going out all the time. And maybe you're even you feel that you need to impress someone or you need to be
Mhm.
present so that you're in the circle for when things start to happen, especially maybe in your career trajectory. So, you get the text or you get the phone call, "Hey, we're going out to eat," right? And you're like, you get that ping in your head, but you don't lasso the thought of, "Oh geez, like number 1, I'm tired, so I don't really want to go out. Number 2, I'm not in a place where it's not that you can't afford it, but for the sake of what you're working towards, you are like, I don't want to spend 30, $50 or more on a meal right now, especially after you just got all these groceries. But you go out anyway, right? Because you're just like, I can't be the person who just says no to this right now. So you go out and you suppress the thought, you're suppressing it, and you go out and you end up spending a lot more than what you wanted to. So there goes the guilt and shame. And now then it turns into oh, I'll start again Monday. It turns into well, I'll just start my plans and my goals again on Monday. And then you just go down the rabbit hole of just like spending, spending, spending. And it just reinforces not only this cycle of the compulsion to belong, consumption for that validation, all in an effort to control those underlying feelings that you are not able to just be honest and have that point of conflict with the people you're interacting with. And it all turns into a dysmorphia, a disordered consumption cycle where you just don't even want to look at like what you're doing. You don't want to address it. So it turns into so much suppression that turns into a very explosive response. And so I want to bring in mindful consumption into that because this is not easy. There's going to be points of friction, but it's so important to find comfort in being uncomfortable because that means that growth is happening. I mean, you don't go to the gym and it's not like your heart doesn't like elevate. That means that you're exercising your body and your heart. If you go to the gym and it feels like the same state as when you're sleeping, you're probably not getting the results that you're looking for. So in that scenario where you're getting ready to go out and you're like, I'm going to lasso the thought and address that. While I want to go out and socialize, I'm not in a place to spend in a way that aligns with my goals. So maybe you still go out, right? And a way to be mindful in your consumption is you don't have to look at the menu and always pick the cheapest thing, but you offer an element of transparency with your fellow consumers that, hey, I'm looking to put my money somewhere else that I'm looking to consume later. What do you think about splitting this meal, this appetizer? What do you think about, hey, I'm just going to get a drink and an appetizer? And if somebody asks why, that's your opportunity to be mindful in your consumption and open up the conversation of money safety because that's another huge part of it.
Well, you are describing exactly an experience that I've had over the past several months. So I may have talked about this on this podcast before. I was just on another podcast and I know I talked about it there. But over the past 12 months, I made some investments in my business and now it's time to pay them back. They were investments that I financed, so that this is debt and credit. And now I'm in the process of paying them down. And something I had to do, Jaelyn, was eventually start saying no to social invitations. And it was hard. But here's the thing. I promised myself I would not say no to every social invitation. But I went through the process that you just described. It was, there was a thought, like I got the invitation. There was a thought like, okay, this could turn out to be an $80 Saturday to go like do an event, in the harvest time, like go do a corn maze with friends and then go out to eat afterwards and stuff like that. Right. And I added up how much that would cost. And I'm like, am I ready? Am I okay with an $80 Saturday? Like, while I may want to have this social interaction and this social connection, which is super important to me, and which is something I've observed is where the majority of my spending goes. It's not necessarily on stuff, it's on social interaction and connection. I was like, you know what? I don't want to spend $80 this Saturday because I know I'm working on this goal. And there was there was a disconnect between that behavior and that decision of an $80 Saturday and getting to my goal. Because the feeling, and one thing that I would suggest for people listening, if they can resonate with this, you really want to tap into the empathy for your future self. Because right in the moment it is very hard when there's that impulse, right, for the consumption. It's very hard to tap into who your future self is and how you want them to feel. And I had done a lot of internal work and practice and mindfulness around, oh my God, it's going to feel so good to walk around knowing that these debts are paid off. So I did a lot of like doubling down on what is that feeling I want to have? Do I want to go out and have the $80 Saturday feeling where I come home at the end of the day saying, that was fun, but I still have to work on this goal and I feel like I'm behind? Or do I want to have the feeling of, whoa, all those debts are gone? So you really need to tap into, this is something, this is a mental mindset thing, right? Tap into how you want your future self to feel and to be, right? And how you want to feel walking around in the world. So what you just described is exactly, but here's the thing. This took work, right? And there's sometimes I said yes to the $80 Saturday and then I said no. And then I kind of went back and forth. And there's sometimes I felt shame and like I had just, gone 2 steps backwards. So it took some time to get to a place where I was making the challenging decision to do the benefit to my future self. And I was like, okay, I'm going to survive. It took me a few times to realize it's like, hey, I'm going to say no to this interaction, but the next one I'm going to say yes to, because I know that fills me up and that's part of my overall wellness. So I want people to know, like, if you're working on a goal as well, and you know that there's some type of like compulsion driving like negative experiences, you don't also have to completely eradicate the thing, like the consumption. That's not what we're saying, right? But it's like I got much more mindful about picking and choosing the situations where I did that because I was much more connected to the empathy of my future self.
Yes. Yes, Marine. I like had to contain myself from not just being like,
I know. Like I know people can't see us, but it's like half the time, like, Jaelyn's talking and I've got this big smile on my face and
or like,
my
it's
head.
just like the aggressive nodding.
Yeah, like, yeah.
I hear you. That's such a good example though. And I mean, just thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate your transparency and I resonate with that experience. Like again, it's the sore today, strong tomorrow. Like when you're working out your muscles, sore today, strong tomorrow. When you're working out your mind, your self-worth, your ability to confront and just be honest. Like it may not feel good at first, but then you really did such an exceptional job of displaying an example of mindful consumption because you were like, okay, how is the consumption of this good? The good is the the social interaction. I like
Mhm.
when we talk about consuming goods, people think about going to the store and like, buying a box of cereal.
Mhm.
The good, how is the consumption of this good, this social experience contributing to the good in my life? And sure, go out and socialize, eat some good food. That is a good experience, but then the way to take a step beyond that question, you ask yourself, how is the consumption of this good contributing to the good in my life? And in the short term, I would be able to socialize with people, I can eat. However, in the long term, I would not be closer to my goals. I may spiral in that guilt and feeling like I'm not disciplined, that I just don't have the ability to say no. And it adds on more weight of those limiting beliefs that we carry. And technique that I really would love to share with people that I utilize every morning is I call it an LBP, a limiting beliefs purge. And I set a timer for 1 minute, and you can use this either just in the morning and like a daily practice, or if, like in Marine's example, you get invited to go out somewhere and you have that $80 Saturday decision looming over your head, you do an LBP. Write down all of the limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs are the thoughts that you have about yourself as to why you can or can't do something, the impact that it may have. Just set a timer for 60 seconds and just write it all out. Or you can even just say it out loud to yourself so that you're acknowledging, not suppressing. Acknowledge the pieces that come with the decision. So, say that you do decide to go out, you need to acknowledge later on after that $80 Saturday, nope, I made this decision. Like I consciously acknowledged within myself that I was going to go and make this decision. So if guilt or shame comes up, you got to knock that down. It's going to come up, but
Mhm.
you got to knock that down. Or if you go the other direction, like Maureen did, of I'm going to say no now so I can say yes later, that contributed to the good in her long term goals. Some of the limiting beliefs there may be, well, people are not going to like me because I said no. And it's like, just because, like, let's dispute that. So when you write that down in the LBP, after you spend that time, that 60-second window, what I like to do is write my my LB or my limiting beliefs tell me I value X. And that's been a big thing. So, like, say that, Maureen writes down a limiting belief. She said no to the $80 Saturday. My friends are going to hate me. Then she can say, my LBP tells me I value social connection. I value reliability. I value showing up for myself and others. But it also tells me I value my goals and what I'm working towards right now. This technique, I also call it. So, you know how women were always typically trying to get smaller because of, social,
We're told
expectations,
make
right?
yourself make yourself small, make yourself nice, make yourself pretty, make yourself pleasant, like fit into this box. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. You hear me? So, we're trying to like shed lbs, like pounds. Well, I'm flipping the script on that. And a practice I utilize is shedding lbs, like shedding limiting beliefs. We're shedding that mental weight. And that's a huge part of mindful consumption.
Okay, everybody, let's let that bake into your system. Shedding limiting beliefs. Do a limiting belief purge in the morning or whenever you're encountering a decision, right? And I think you touched on some really important things, Jaelyn. It's like the limiting beliefs I had about potentially saying no were exactly that. My friends won't invite me anywhere anymore. They're going to think that I'm upset with them, or they're going to wonder what's up with me, right? So if I can maybe in a healthy way, like wrestle with those thoughts or at least engage with them and encounter them and say to myself, okay, but what is this, as you mentioned, flipping the script, what is this telling me about me? That
Mhm.
self-knowledge. It's telling me, but I love this social connection. And then what that can also tell me, it's like, okay, Maureen, then it's my responsibility to say, how can I get this social connection without it costing me $80 today?
Mhm.
And maybe the answer is like texting my friends and say, hey, I can't make it this Saturday, but hey, next Saturday, do you guys want to come over for a potluck? Right?
Offer
I
solutions, get creative. That's awesome.
right. So it sounds for me like I think that comes back to the autonomy, the agency, and the personal responsibility aspect. Once we have that self-knowledge, we are resourced and in a place where we can start taking those actions that
Mhm.
really honors what it is we want to go for.
Mhm.
Less shame, less disordered consumption, and more mindful consumption, and feeling better and more like connected to those goals that we want to go for.
Exactly. And the other huge benefit of mindful consumption that begins with just you articulated it so beautifully and captured it, that it's that acknowledgement piece. Take the time to learn about yourself. Like, you are one of one. There's only one you, one lifetime that we get, whatever your beliefs are, but right now we're in this lifetime, and true wealth is not about numbers or what is in your bank account. It's the quality of life. It's the dimensional abundance, dimensional wealth, and financial success, socialization, validation, all of those different types of consumption. They should support your well-being and not come at its expense. So I'm totally with you, Maureen.
Yeah, thank you. I think what we're talking about and like the framing of it is, I mean, I can feel it impacting me internally. I'm like, yes, like more mindfulness. And I think what I want to share with folks who are saying, well, like, how can I be more mindful about my consumption? I also have another episode dedicated to this, money mindfulness with Jessica Beyer. So go ahead and take a
Perfect.
look at that episode. But something I know about, or that we know about mindfulness, is I believe it's going to take time.
Hmm.
It's not going to take a lot of time, but if we're engaging in something mindfully, we're not in this hyper fast pacing that we're constantly in as consumers, as employees, as professionals, as individuals.
Hmm.
Mindfulness, there's some type of a pause that happens with mindfulness. And that pause, we actually have to put work in to take the pause, because all the other forces, and I'm snapping my fingers for folks that, might be hearing that in the background. All those other forces are telling us to go fast, 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 fast.
Hmm.
Buy one click, tap, buy now, so on and so forth, right? You have systems of consumerism that are built to make you move fast. So
Hmm.
if somebody's sitting there listening, saying like, well, how do I like engage in mindful, what do we mean by mindful consumption? One element that I might suggest, and Jaelyn, I want to hear your take as well, is like, it's going to take pausing for a second. Like, it's not a fast thing. So if you notice that you're on this, hamster wheel, fast, 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 chances are it's not going to be mindful. So you're going to have to give yourself a breath, take a pause, and evaluate. So what would you say like are the indicators of mindful consumption?
Those are such great points, Maureen, and I appreciate you so much sharing your insight that I can tell you've really taken in both professionally in your work and also personally. Anyone that you're working with, if they act like they don't have a personal element to their experiences, that you should run the opposite way, because no one's an exact like expert. Like, we have to recognize our own experiences to really help people. And
Right.
so mindfulness sometimes can, like, we are in a era where like mental health is very much accepted now. However, people are like, well, I don't know, I don't want to do breath work, or I don't want to journal. And people get this like very strong resentment towards mindfulness because it is that call to action to pause. And sometimes people can be a little bit uncomfortable with really sitting down with themselves, which is why maybe engaging with a coach, a therapist, investing that time in yourself for like a month where you're not comfortable doing it on your own can be effective. But I resonate with some of the examples and methods that you used in regards to mindfulness. I mean, our minds are meant to think, and I don't believe overthinking exists. Overthinking does not exist, because telling your mind to not think so much is like telling your heart to stop beating or telling your lungs to not breathe as deeply. So mindfulness comes with the fact of lassoing the thought. You're engaging in something and you have a ping, a different thought that you do recognize. One of our gifts and kryptonites as human beings is the ability to think about what we're thinking about.
Yes.
So, and it can be hard. It can be hard, but turn it into your superpower. And that takes time, it takes practice. So, to really come full circle with answering your question, when engaging in mindfulness, find the smallest step that you can take for yourself.
Mm.
Is it writing down on a sticky note and putting it around your living space somewhere? How is the consumption of this good contributing to the good in my life? Is it writing down on that sticky note, take one deep breath? And if
Mhm.
that's all you do for your mindfulness that day, that's fine. Maybe a week from now you take 2 deep breaths. Maybe you just take the time to notice how many how many items in your eyesight are your favorite color. Like, I'm looking around right now looking at all the green is my favorite color. I'm looking at Marine's sweater. But like, mindfulness are just those pieces of time that you take back for yourself as those deposits back into your focus, back into the intentionality of living. We have lost that, Marine, the intentionality of living.
I agree, and I feel it every day, even myself, because I think,
Same.
as I mentioned, there are systems at work that want us to not be intentional, especially as consumers. There are systems at work that make it easy for us to not be intentional, to just kind of like slide into big spending and money decisions and the hamster wheel. So
Yeah.
it will take time, it will take intention, it will take a small step that's different from what's going on the hamster wheel. So, and when we take a step out of the normal, out of what we're used to,
Mm-hmm.
you can expect. So you heard it here first. You can expect to feel discomfort.
Yes.
So it's also like just normalizing and being okay with discomfort. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's taken me a long time and a lot of personal work and a lot of therapy to get to a place where it's like, I can feel shame. And but in a way that's different from how I used to feel shame. Like I can feel shame today and know that it doesn't have to overwhelm me. So I think when we can get to those places with our finances and with our consumption, I can feel the shame. I can feel the discomfort of this big, bright spotlight on all of the things I'm doing, air quotes, wrong, right? All of I'm spending too much, I'm charging too much, blah, blah, blah. We can get to a place where we experience that discomfort and we don't let it overwhelm us. I think that's something that
Yes.
mindfulness also allows us to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Your net worth is not your self worth. And if you can find ways to make deposits, not only into our bank accounts, but make deposits into the other dimensions of your life. And if anyone's interested in the dimensions of wellness, definitely view my page and some of the connections Marine's going to put in the show notes. But it is that intentionality piece that really ends up compounding everything in our life, especially our finances. If you can create that space in your mind, it gives us a greater capacity to think, to become creative, to come up with solutions to increase our income, different avenues of connection. But it all starts with that intentionality piece and really building that mindful consumption in all different elements of your life.
Well, I think that is a great place to wrap up our conversation. Jaelyn, I know that you and I could talk for
Right. We're gonna have more episodes. Yeah, Marine's gonna be on my show.
yeah,
Finance,
so
Fitness, Finesse in the near future.
keep an eye out for that. So, Jaelyn, I know that people are listening saying, like, how can I find out more about her work with disordered consumption and the dimensional wellness that you're working on? So, how can people find you?
Yeah, so my handles are at Jaelyn Vickery, at Dimensional Wealth, Finance, Fitness, Finesse across Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook is where I'm active. Man, in pursuit of the different things that I love doing, social media can be exhausting. So I'm working on elevating that platform. But definitely check out my LinkedIn, I would say is the best place to go. It encompasses everything I'm involved in. And I have a website that's under construction that's going to be just a plethora of resources and interactive so that we can all build wealth with wellness.
Fabulous. And for everybody listening, I will get all that information in the show notes for you. Jaelyn Vickery, thank you so much for being on the show.
This was amazing. Great start to my day. I hope everybody gets a good energy from this. Thank you for your time, Maureen.
Oh, absolutely. And for everyone listening, as always with your finances, be kind to yourself, seek support when you need it, and let me know how it goes. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.